For everything from questions about cucumbers to homes on cul-de-sacs, you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Ask Mr. Greenthumb in Real Estate Show with Stan DeFreitas, the dad, and James DeFreitas, the son. For the next hour, call in with your questions about gardening, growing your favorite veggies, and growing your profits in real estate. Call them anytime at 727-254-7127. That's 727-254-7127. And now, your hosts, Stan and James DeFreitas.
And I am Stan DeFreitas, Mr. GT, Mr. Greenthumb, and
I am James DeFreitas, and of course we are here each and every week. And if you have gardening questions, of course you can always go to AskMrGreenthumb.com. That's ASKMR Greenthumb.com. You can click on the Ask button in the upper left corner, and you can submit a gardening question directly from your phone, which is great because you may have taken a picture of something that you didn't know what it was, if it was a plant or if it was a bug identification and you were interested in learning more about it. We always believe knowledge is power. And so you can just submit it directly from your phone. And, 24 to 48 hours, we'll get back to you with what we think. And the price for that is free, Free, hard to beat. So that's AskMrGreenthumb.com.
And I'm amazed how good the pictures are off of our iPhones and things. When people will send me, I say, look, usually take a faraway shot and one up close of the foliage and of the trunk. And then I can identify what it is and maybe what the problem is. Otherwise, I have to come out and look at it. And if I come out and look at it, I have to charge because when I go to the gas station and I tell them I want to get it for FREE, they tell me NO, no, and no. So, and the time and stuff. And normally I have to have James with me. So he is my legs half the time to get out and he can get down and put those injectors in.
Right.
I can sit and point. And so we have a division of labor. And
I consider, I'm the legs and you're the big brain.
Well, I like that analogy. I don't know how true it is, but together you get both of us.
I convince them of the fact that you're the big brain.
Well,
that's the sales side of the business.
You got to keep doing that part because that's the important part.
But the most important thing is today we do have a guest in studio with us today, and it's the great Kelly Stafford from Stafford Tree Service. And one of the reasons we love having you on is that you're an expert in your field. And what should the folks? This show is going to be airing in early March. So the question I have for you to start off with is, what should people be thinking about now to be proactive before the hurricane season starts?
So you probably want to call your local arborist and have them come out and just assess the trees and see if there's anything that they do need.
Sure.
Before you get into the storm season, because obviously if you wait.
And you are the local arborist.
Yes.
So you or your brother or one of your members will be out to look at the tree. And I've always had good reports that you guys get out in a fairly timely fashion when you're heading that way. It may take a day or two or three, but you're going to be there when you can. And they're going to give you good ideas, and so that's important. But a lot of people go, "Oh, I didn't notice it." People, we get into this going to the store and taking the kids to there, and we do this, and we don't always look at our tree for the problems.
Right.
And I'm amazed every time I look at these big old trees. Somebody called us and looked at a palm, and it was a beautiful palm. He's really worried about his palm. And I started looking at the bark, and I said, well, you've got borers in these old oaks.
And they were gorgeous oak trees there. And
huge. Some of the biggest live oaks I've seen. And you think, well, live oaks don't usually have that many problems. Yeah, but they can. And they do, especially when they've been around for 150 years. You can bet some little beetle somewhere said, that might be just a great place to make a home.
Right. And the other thing I noticed in particular about the job that he's talking about is there were improper cuts. There were cuts where they didn't make a nice clean cut. Obviously didn't have your service out there. They didn't have Stafford Tree Service come out and do the cuts. And so the problem is when you do have what I call the fly-by-night tree service come out there that doesn't have insurance, that's not licensed, doesn't have skin in the game if they make a mistake, then what you wind up getting is exactly what you paid for. You paid for a job that was a lot cheaper and you got cheaper results. And I guess in some aspect I shouldn't complain too much because they did such a bad job on cutting the tree. it left a wound on the tree. And that's exactly where the beetles were starting to make a home.
That's where they'll come in first, because that's where the wood's
Right.
going to deteriorate back into the tree.
Right.
And that's what they had done. It's amazing. I think some kind of builder had made the cut, because they built the house in around these trees. And I can see the builder was probably hacked. I can't really bring in stuff as easy as I'd like. So they left these big stubs. Now here you've got a beautiful property, a multi-million-dollar property, and you've let your construction, not to pick on construction guys.
Right.
They're great. They're not arborists.
Right.
And they go out there and go, hey, look at this. I got my Sawzall and I'm going to make a cut. Okay. But they made a horrible cuts. And, I'm thinking, and I suggested, what you need to do is have an arborist come out here and make nice clean cuts, because yes, I can inject the tree all day long, but if you leave these 3-foot stubs, which they shouldn't have left, you'd be better off to have it redone.
Right.
Yeah.
And I said, and yeah, you'll spend some money, but I said, if you spent, I think it was like $4 million to build this house, you mean you want these trees to die? No, I bought the lot because of the trees.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I just went, Tarpon Springs, I just went out for a contractor and looked at a tree that the Shannon at the city of Tarpon wanted a letter for the tree for them to be able to remove it. And they had done some cuts themselves. There was some mechanical damage where some of the branches had been like ripped and torn, and so I did write the letter, but they still charged them $1,500 to take the tree out.
Sure.
Because it was done
They-
improperly
'cause-
before.
Yeah.
Right.
And at some points, once they've done that much damage, there's not much you can do but to go ahead and take
Right.
the tree on down.
Yeah, that it needed to come out anyways, but yeah, they charged him a pretty penny for that sand oak.
Right, and that brings me to another thought that I wanted to bring up too, is the reason the guy with a station wagon and a lawnmower sticking out the back can charge you $50 to take down that tree is his overhead's rather small. When you're talking to these tree trimming companies today, the reason that they can't do it for $50 is because they're licensed, bonded, and insured. And the issue is they also have, most of them have in excess of millions of dollars of equipment. I mean, before we got on the air today, we were talking about what I assume is a specialty type of crane. I think it was $600,000 that a company paid for this piece of equipment.
Literally, people, some of the arborists spend millions
Yeah.
on their equipment. I mean, if they want every game and toy that you can have, which would make everything ideal.
Well, for safety and
Right.
for reducing liability.
and to make it quicker.
Right.
Right.
I mean, it's nice you can get into places sometimes that you can't traditionally.
Well, speed is only great as long as you don't get sued because you went so fast that you didn't have if you have a problem, that's what I think the beauty of a crane is amazing, because you can literally piecemeal that tree all the way down without ever worrying that you're going to drop that tree on their house.
And I had a story of a buddy of mine who I knew, not great, but he's a friend, an acquaintance I knew years ago. I've known him for 30 years.
A great friend, very close.
Well, I knew him. I know him, and I still actually talk to him from time to time. But he ran into the tree business. He said, "Oh, this is a great way to make money." And I think he had a station wagon or something, and he went out and bought himself a Echo chainsaw or something.
Was there a lawnmower sticking out the back?
Well, it might
I
have
want
been.
to complete this analogy.
I think he had a rake and a shovel hanging out the back.
Okay.
And he's actually a pretty smart guy. But he thought, well, if anybody can do it. So he went out there, and his first tree he was trimmed, it fell on the guy's porch and house. And he literally ran for his vehicle and was like, last seen, I think he took a trip off to Colorado for a year or two. And
Well, fight or flight. I mean, when you make a mistake and you know you've made that mistake, I'm not too surprised that might have been the reaction. But again, you can pay for cheap and you'll get cheap. And I'm not suggesting that you have to hire the most expensive arborist company and tree trimming company out there, but I do think you do want to make sure that they are licensed and that they have insurance. I mean, these are things that I just think are no-brainers today, and it's one of the reasons that when people contact us, it's a no-brainer to recommend Stafford Tree Service. And again, that's Stafford Tree Service, svc.com, right? If I want to get to the website.
Yeah.
And I know people will clamor to want to get to it as they're writing it down. So that's Stafford Tree, svc.com. And then right from there, then they can click on, I assume you have a phone number that it's clickable, or is
There's a phone number, or there's they can fill out a
questionnaire?
Yeah, a questionnaire, and it'll email it to me.
Perfect.
So
let me ask you another quick question. When you're just, because I always like to give people what to expect when they're expecting from their tree company. Do you do a lot of your negotiating back and forth with emails in terms of how the contracts are sent?
yeah, I would say we do a lot email, and even texting now has gotten really popular.
There you go.
So
So that's what I'm saying is that, like, in my situation, my wife is very phone phobic. She doesn't like talking on the phone. She just, and if she has to talk on the phone, well, honey, you handle it. It's not my thing.
She did pick up a phone. I saw her 20 years ago pick up a phone, so she can.
But it's not her forte. It's not something she enjoys doing. But texting and emailing, 100% on board with that. And so, and I don't know how you feel about it, but I don't really care. Whatever the client is comfortable with, I will adjust to whatever the client's comfort level is.
same.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, they're the boss. Everyone's got a boss, and I just say, hey, if they're striking the check and then they're happy with how we communicated, then that's a win for me.
Sure.
And I think that's kind of how it needs to be. Now, the boomer generation, more of you guys kind of want to use the phone at all costs.
It's usually my first priority because that's what when I worked as an extension horticulturist, I answered the phone all day long, and usually we had anywhere from probably 50 to 100 phone calls that I had to take. So I just got used to the phone was what I did, and then I became a supervisor. So when somebody did come in and they were a real pain, they'd go, "Oh, you get the supervisor," and they'd go, "Well, yeah, I'm the the supervisor." Well, there. It's like they then reached the plateau. But I mean, I often get people and go, "Look, what they told you was correct. I mean, we may not know. We may need to look under a microscope. We may need to send samples off to Gainesville." We can know some things. People go, "Well, somebody told me my tree will die with spider mites." I said, "Well, maybe some, junipers and things might, but typically a live oak isn't going to die from spider mites."
Right.
But
and if you're not sure, too, one of the things I would really advise against, too, don't take advice from the garden center at the big box stores. Call up an arborist. Call a Kelly Stafford. Make sure you reach out and talk to somebody who knows, who's doing this on a daily basis, and isn't just the guy that was willing to shift over to the garden center because, well, it was better than not working at all. That person doesn't have enough skin in the game.
I was working in lighting yesterday.
Right. and it's a little disappointing, the amount of knowledge that you find at some of these garden centers. It's a little bit lacking. So always, knowledge is power. And I'll let you take it away.
So stay with us here with Kelly Stafford, our special guest here on the Ask Mr. Greenthumb show, right here on AM 860, The Answer.
Want to talk real estate? Remember, you can reach Stan at 727-423-4794 or on the web at askmrgreenthumb.com.
Why choose Stafford Tree Service? Is it because they're experienced, have the latest equipment, and friendly professional personnel? Absolutely. Stafford's positioned themselves as a leading tree trimming company in all of Tampa Bay. With honest professionals and competitive pricing, they'll earn your trust too. In business for over 15 years, Stafford Tree Service is licensed, bonded, and insured to provide you the very best tree trimming experience. Call today, 727-546-8786, 727-546-8786. On the web at staffordtreesvc.com.
Biophilia, our innate attraction to other living things. It's why people love plants. And around Tampa Bay, Plants, that's Plantz, is bringing nature inside, in workspaces and homes by delivering beautiful foliage plants. Our plants increase oxygen and filter out pollutants, reducing stress and improving productivity, and get you in touch with your biophilic side. Go to plantz.us.
Welcome back to the Ask Mr. Greenthumb and Real Estate Show. Connect online at askmrgreenthumb.com. Got questions about gardening, real estate, or both? Give him a call at 727-254-7127. That's 727-254-7127. And now your hosts, Stan and James DeFreitas.
And I was going to mention we have Kelly Stafford with us with Stafford Tree Service. And I was going to mention yesterday I bragged. I put in some tomatoes, put in some broccoli, I put in some cabbage. And I figure it's going to be, $950,000 retail value at Publix. So there you go. I got 4 items in there.
Well,
there's Roberto. Hey, the man behind the curtain. He's the guy who helps make sure all the dials and whistles work around here.
That's right, the head engineer for the mighty AM 860.
And he also doesn't mind. He's got a big hole in his tree out here. And I told him, I said, I'm going to start having tours on what not to do for your trees until he gets Stafford Tree out here to trim these trees up.
We're going to shame them into doing what they ought to do around here.
That's right. We will be having tours Monday, Wednesday, and Friday to come out and see what they don't do for their trees here at the mighty AM 860. The answer. No.
Well, it's a good point, too, because a lot of businesses don't take action on things until it costs them something. Then they find out what their policy looks like when they actually cause a problem.
Right.
And that's a really bad way to operate, not to throw AM 860 under the bus entirely.
I wouldn't dare.
But I will say, I'm talking about businesses in general, so I want to make that clear. But I will say, the idea of having to have a problem is a bad way to learn about your policy. It would be, I would encourage people to, especially, in your business, and I'm sure you do, but I would encourage people, take a look at your, whether it's malpractice or whether it's in a situation where, your liability and coverage. And I'm amazed at the number of businesses out there that claim that they have some type of insurance, and then you find out they really don't have any insurance.
Well, yeah, because tree services are not held to the same standard as like contractors, where they're checking to make sure that they're carrying this stuff, and like the Wild West with tree services, there's no regulation.
And I think that's a shame because it's really, the whole idea, is to protect the public.
Right.
Are we really doing a good job at protecting the public by not holding people to a higher standard? And that brings in the whole thing we were talking about in a previous break too, which is the track system. Maybe you could educate our listeners a little bit about what you know of the track system. And what I know about it is, I don't know as much, or probably.
It's relatively new.
Yeah,
so
why don't you guys talk about that?
We're both learning a little bit about it.
Right, yeah. So it's tree risk assessment qualified. So it just basically saying that you've gone to a class where they've, taught you about, assessing the trees and the risks, and then coming to a determination on what type of risk it is, if it's a moderate risk, a high risk, or a low risk tree. Sure. And so now with the arborist letters, they're kind of wanting you to do that assessment and determine, because if it can be brought below a moderate risk, then you can't write the letter. It's got to go through the permitting process, and that's where it gets
dicey.
It gets a bit dicey. Mm-hmm. We've all been doing sort of that informally all along. We look at a tree and go, well, we think the tree could live, or you can trim this and this and this, and you can keep a tree going. Now, I'm the arborist that never carries a chainsaw, so that's the reason I'm going to refer it to Kelly. But people will have me look at something. Now, I'm often on the side of trying to save trees, so we often go out and inject trees. Mm-hmm. But I will say also that I am a licensed certified pest control operator, and I can handle chemicals legally. Sure. And there again, if the guy says, well, I can inject these trees for you, show me that you're a licensed pest control operator. And not just, as you mentioned earlier, a restricted use person. Right. And that's a Roundup license, in our opinion, in the industry.
And that's being abused. We talked a little bit in passing in the previous show about how that's being applied, because you're seeing a lot of maintenance companies. They will apply for a restricted use pesticide license, and I took it upon myself to look up a little bit of the legalities of it, and it says restricted use pesticide license are not valid for residential applications. Well, that's interesting. It's not valid for structural pest control. That makes perfect sense to me, because that kind of implies that you may be treating for termites or something inside. So that makes pretty good sense. And then it says restricted use pesticide license are not valid for application within 10 feet of any building or structure. Whoa, that I didn't know, because I'm thinking to myself, these people could be applying pesticides even in a common area of a large condominium complex, which could be considered potentially a commercial area, because it's an area that everybody owns collectively and not an individual unit. And then, of course, the last one on the list is that restricted use pesticide licenses are not valid for public health pest control, like mosquitoes and that kind of thing. That also makes sense. So it's and just like the name implies, it's a very restricted use. So, I just think they need to be careful. And I think what's happening here is I don't think that there are a ton of people out there that are inspecting this, and it's probably relying on self-reporting or people that notice it.
And that's kind of one of the problems we have too, is now that we say if you're a certified arborist, you can kind of sign off on your own stuff. And now we know Kelly is very ethical, so we have no problems with her and Stafford Tree Service. Some of the companies, and I saw one company, and I won't say who they are because that wouldn't be ethical, but they have this big equipment, and it does all the work for them. It grabs the trunk and cuts it.
I know
So we kind of know a few of the companies that have that. But they took down 3 trees on a property for a rental unit, and I went and looked at the trees, and I wasn't asked to, so I'm not getting involved in that. But I saw no reason why those 3 trees should be removed other than a profit center.
Yeah.
And the person who owned the rental unit had kept it empty for a couple of years. And I think, and I'm not sure, tax reasons for whatever. Officially, I think the daughter was living there that never lived there. And they were just doing it because often if you hold something for over 2 years, you can get, capital gains. And we're not going into a financial show here, but that's the reason.
That was the motivating
before
factor.
that. But it kind of hacked me off because there were 3 beautiful trees. But, a lot of people want that open look.
Yeah.
And I understand. I don't really want that. I like trees. I think they give off oxygen. They take in carbon dioxide. They do all these wonderful things, which I think is amazing. These scientists go, we'll come up with a scrubber. I go, okay, it's called a tree.
It's called a tree.
But, no, we'll invent this great big wall and we can charge people $1 billion and it'll do what a tree does.
Right. Well, and I sent Stan recently an article, because Bill Gates was being attacked recently from all of the private flying that he does. And his excuse in the interview was, I've invested in this company that does carbon sequestration with these multi-million-dollar machines, and I've already purchased the amount of carbon that would offset any carbon I'm going to emit. And it sounded like a way a billionaire would answer something in a way to make themselves feel better for the amount of polluting that they're going to do.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the best carbon sequestration that we have are trees. And, it's one of the reasons that cities have rules when you go to build something about making sure that when you clear the lot that you put so many trees back in its place. It's because they're thinking about things that you wouldn't necessarily think about if left to your own device. You would probably just sit back and do whatever was most economically advisable for your pocketbook rather than thinking about the broader scope of Mother Nature.
But I do love some of these politicians that go, well, I fly all over the world in the country telling people about how bad they are for what they're doing. And I'm thinking, hello, let's look, is that the kettle calling the pot black?
Yeah, the kettle black issue for sure. We are talking, of course, to the great Kelly Stafford with Stafford Tree Service, Stafford Tree Service, SVC.com. And when we come back from the break, we're going to ask her a bunch more questions. And it's a very, very interesting show.
It is. Stay with us as the plant talk, real estate talk, and tree talk continues here on AM 860, The Answer.
Want to talk real estate? Call James DeFreitas at 727-254-7127 or go online, aflre.com. Broken air conditioner? Keep your home's AC running smoothly all year long with Easy Breezy AC. With thousands of active commercial and residential customers, Easy Breezy AC is Tampa Bay's most trusted HVAC company. Easy Breezy AC cares about those in need. Donate 2 cans of food and receive $20 off a $79 service call. Go to easybreezyac.com and use promo code Greenthumb for an additional $10 off your service call. Call 727-856-HVAC. Life's hard. Comfort's not. Did you know that Stan DeFreitas Mr. Greenthumb can come to your house and examine your plants, trees, and palms? His knowledge can help you become the envy of your neighborhood with lush, green, healthy trees that don't just live, but thrive. Palms and oak trees are part of what makes Florida a beautiful place to live, but they get diseases and are often cut down. We offer ways to save your trees. Call or text Stan today at 727-423-4794 or go online to askmrgreenthumb.com. That's ASKMR Greenthumb.com. Welcome back to the Ask Mr. Greenthumb and Real Estate Show. Got questions about perennial flowers? What about issues with closing on your newest property? Give them a call at 727-254-7127. That's 727-254-7127. And now your hosts, Stan and James DeFreitas.
The dynamic father and son team here. And we're the only gardening show in Tampa Bay right now, which is interesting. So, and we are looking, if there's one good sponsor out there, I only want one or two. I don't want 100. So 100 of you call, I don't want you. I'd like one more good company, either a good restaurant or a good
Well, they were
builder.
calling at the break even, and they didn't even know we were looking for a sponsor.
Brian's in there always going, I'm sorry, sir, they can't take 500 sponsors. But we do appreciate that. I do actually need about one good sponsor, one good restaurant, one good builder, somebody like that. So if you come across somebody, I could use them. I don't want to have...
And how would they get a hold of you if they were interested
They
in
can call
sponsoring?
me at 727-423-4794. I give them the radio voice. 727-423-4794.
And while we're paying bills, and if you're interested in potentially having your tree looked at for trimming or if it needs to be removed, Kelly's from Stafford Tree Service, how would they get in touch with you?
Well, it's not going to sound as good as Stan.
Well, give me the thing and I can touch it for you.
Don't
All
do
right.
yourself short.
They can reach me at 727-546-8786.
Okay, and so if I'm an old timer and I want to talk on the phone, I can literally get Kelly.
Yeah, and you could talk to me I talked to a lady for 23 minutes yesterday.
Nice. So if I need to call you and I have a tree concern, but I have to slip in like some problems that are happening in my marriage, that's okay as long as there's still a tree that needs to be
Right.
I can see somebody writing down her number now going, only the lonely.
Yes.
You know? No, she's actually in business, so she's not running her good psychiatric.
But I do always answer. Yeah,
okay.
it forwards to my cell when I'm not there. So.
And that's good too, because one of the things that I find frustrating is a lot of times there are a lot of businesses out there where it's, you have to go through the website and it's only through the website. And then they don't tell you who they are or how to get a hold of the person. And then it's like, well, it's this entity that's this blank thing that and again, I don't care what business you're in, but people will not do business with you unless they know, like, and trust you. If they know, like, and trust you, you're in. And you're going to do business with that person. And in your business, it's like any other business in this regard, in the sense that you're not interested in going out there and trimming their tree once. You'd like to be able to be thought of for any of their trimming needs for them, their neighbors, their friends, and and to be thought of and as the go-to person. And that's really what I think people should strive for is I don't care if you're selling somebody a car. Don't be happy selling them a car one time. Sell them a
Right.
car for a lifetime. Make sure they're only going to come back to that person. Now, good luck going into your local car dealer and finding the same people working there after a couple of years. Good luck with that.
Now, if you see Kelly's truck out there, often it doesn't mean you couldn't go over and say, hey, would you take a look at mine because I'm a block away?
Right.
You just as soon be able to go from here to there to there. And often people will go, well, I don't really want to interrupt them. Well, give her a call. She can say, yeah, you're right. They're right around the corner from you, and they'll be glad to, get you on our list if we can get to you. Maybe not same day, but it'd be nice if you can do work in the same area.
Yeah, definitely. And at least look at it, because once you're out of that area, then, fuel prices, it's always nice to look at it, while we're in the neighborhood.
Not according to our president. They've actually come down dramatically. Well, no. He said they came down a little bit, and we hope you think that sounds like dramatically.
Well, anyway, so if the trucks are out there and they're in the process of Stafford Tree Services in the process of servicing someone's property, now it's your brother that helps run the actual that side of the business, and your brother's name is
His name's Matthew.
Matthew. So
Yep.
if I go up and I say, hey, Matthew, could you take a look at XYZ property for me? He's going to be more than happy to take down your number and stuff and look at stuff. He's very approachable, just
Absolutely.
like you are. And, so I guess the thing that I want to do is I want to make sure that people understand, that you guys are real people. It's a family-owned business. You're not a juggernaut. You're not somebody that is, have 500 trucks and throws away business. You're the type of, and you'll go a lot of places too. Some of these tree trimming companies that we have been in touch with, well, I only do this area, and that's the only area they do. But you'll go in different places, right?
Oh yeah, we do all of Pinellas and surrounding. Tampa.
Okay, so you will go into Hillsborough a little bit.
Yep.
Okay.
In fact, I had one job where I was doing some injecting, and I recommended, and Kelly's brother met me there, and I said, look, I don't do any of the tree trimming. They had a bunch of trees. You couldn't hardly see their property, and they're a long time. Actually, they were 860 listeners that heard
nice.
about me. This was some time ago, a year or two ago, and I called Kelly, and she said, well, my brother's coming over to Tampa for something else, and met me at a specific time, and I met him and talked to the homeowners. We all I did the injecting part, they did the trim part, and
Yeah, and I love that too. It's called a warm handoff. I mean, what's ultimately happening either way, if you guys see a tree that's being attacked or seeing beetle holes or any of that kind of stuff, we're more than happy to go out there and meet with your brother if he's on property, and that way they already know, like, and trust your brother Matt, and then they can know, like, and trust us as well, and then we can provide the treatment that's going to allow that tree to survive long enough for it to be trimmed again, which is really what we want. We
Sure.
want to work in a concerted effort with Mother Nature. And a lot of times people will say to us, well, this tree injection idea, isn't it just, you're just going to make it to where my tree is going to die slower? Well, maybe in some cases, but the idea, from what I gather from most of the research, since this was put to us recently to gather research data, and I won't name the college that asked us to do this, but they did, and I looked it up, and it turns out that on average, when injected, these trees that are injected with the proper pesticides, that you will kill off about 80% of the beetle larvae. So, people always say to me, well, geez, why isn't it a one-hit wonder? Well, because I'm telling you in advance that with one treatment, I'm only going to eradicate 80% of your problem. So typically our program is we'll come out, we'll treat the tree, and then in 6 months, we'll come back and we'll treat it again. And then after that, based on how the tree is responding, we'll come back and we'll hit it on a yearly basis. And then after that, we may not be needed afterwards, So dare I say, we're being ethical and telling people, hey, we don't need to take your money because we don't need to do the treatment anymore because your tree's in good shape. And that's our goal.
yeah, and we do try to get them on a program now more than we did because it's hard to remember. And if they don't remember, a lot of times they don't call me until the tree's, it's totally leafless and dead. And then I said, well, you can call Kelly at that point because I can't do anything for your tree when it's dead. And they go, well, I only saw the sawdust up 3 or 4 feet high. Mm-hmm. And I go, well, that didn't just happen, in a while.
Right.
And I had a lady one time, I wanted to see the lady, and the lady was crying. She loved her tree. And I said, well, you need to watch your trees a little bit closer and take a picture of the trunk. If you're in doubt, take a picture of the trunk, take a picture of the foliage, and send it to me, or contact Kelly.
Right.
We can look at things and we can see things.
We want people to get the information no matter where they get it from, but hopefully from a reputable source. Don't rely on the big box stores' gardening departments because you have no idea what they know or don't know, and most of the time they might be able to point you to the plant that you're interested in, but they'll have no idea how to care for it.
I almost hate to go in them because I've been in there before and I'm listening to the information that's being doled out and I'm going, well, that's not right. I said, I hate to be a Budinsky, but what you just told them was totally wrong. It's, especially if it's an insect and they're selling a fungicide, or if it's a fungus and they're selling them a pesticide, you're wasting it. It's not good for the environment if you're not applying for the right thing.
Right.
Kind of like going to your doctor. You expect this works for that. Don't give me that because you think, it's important that you do the right thing.
Sure.
In fact, I'm just thinking, I had a leg cramp, and I was thinking, I need to get off these statins or cut them to go to something else because
CoQ10 is your friend.
Yes,
guess.
I take that every day.
Yeah.
God, the more you get older too, I think you start looking for more things. What's going to cut down on some of the pain and problems? And I remember being a kid, 13, 14, 15, you go, I'm never getting old. I'm never going to have a pain. I'm never going to have a problem. Well, let me clue you. You will be humbled a number of times in your life because you will start to get some pain and stuff. And I always got, those old people, they're old. And now that I'm an old person, I go, yeah, they were right. So
we still refer to you as old-ish.
Oldish, yes, I'm not.
I would be more comfortable with the ish
Oh,
part.
I like the ish part.
Yeah.
Depending on the day.
Well, and the other thing too is that they always say you're as old as you feel. And the other thing is I have met older people that have great dispositions, and
Sure.
I've met older people that complain nonstop. But I will say this: they were complaining when they were in their 20s and 30s and 40s too.
Right.
Yep.
So it's really a state of mind. And I would say you can focus on things in the world that are not right, or you can learn to accept some of the things the way they are. I mean, I had this conversation recently with my neighbor who's 73 years old. She's a nice lady. She's Italiano, okay? She's got the Italiano genes, and she's feisty. She was definitely made for this world, but she always has something to complain about. God love Linda Trombetta, great lady. But the one thing I would say to her is I've been working with her to try to get her to look at the glass half full and try not to expect people to behave how she wants them to expect and just accept people for how they are. Now, that's tough when you're 73. A lot of but I will say this, you can teach an old dog new tricks. You can.
Tell her to go out and garden.
Right.
One of the things you can do with gardening is
I can hear her now.
God's in heaven, all's right with
I
the
can
world.
hear her.
Yeah.
Gardening? Are you kidding me? I'm not gardening. It's hot outside.
Well, I tell her I'll give her a couple lectures. She actually sings quite well.
Yeah, she does.
Let's give her her points. She's a songbird, and
she does, and I
we'll
help
recommend her for that.
And I do help her too, and she's not good on the computer thing, so I help her create a playlist for when she's going out there to do her. I don't feel like in our society we support the arts in the way that we should, and so one of my ways of giving back is to make sure that that she's capable of doing her song list and being able to perform it live because she sings jazz music and that kind of
Oh,
thing.
that's awesome.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
she's definitely has, and she's a retired music teacher as well. So, God knows she deserves the enormous pat on the back for putting her time in as a school teacher, given the lack of pay that they all seem to have. And we still, by the way, I don't care what your politics are, they're all underpaid. They're all overworked, and they do not get this ginormous time off during the summer that you guys all want to justify as some reason why they should take less. And by the way, the school boards, they're still figuring out ways to take their pay. Even when the governor gives them more money, they're still usurping their pay so that the teachers at the end don't seem to get the raise increases that they're promised. So, all right, I'm done with myself.
Yeah, that's sad.
Right. So only the lonely. Let's have your number again.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so they can reach me at 727-546-8786.
And the website?
Stafford Tree SVC, that's abbreviation for service.com.
Okay, and then if I go there, there's either the number. If I'm a boomer, I can dial the number, and if I'm not a boomer or I'm a boomer that likes tech, which does happen, rare but does, I can then click on your web submission and type in maybe a problem. Is there a way to submit a photo that I can show you what's up with my tree?
You know what? Nobody has ever done that. I usually check it and then I just give them a call.
That makes perfect sense. So again, we're talking to Kelly Stafford, and we will continue on after the break.
All right, so make sure you don't change that dial. Stay with us as the Plant Talk continues here on AM 860, The Answer.
Interested in having a home consult? Remember, you can reach Stan at 727-423-4794 or on the web at AskMrGreenthumb.com.
Why choose Stafford Tree Service? Is it because they're experienced, have the latest equipment, and friendly professional personnel? Absolutely. Stafford's positioned themselves as a leading tree trimming company in all of Tampa Bay. With honest professionals and competitive pricing, they'll earn your trust too. In business for over 15 years, Stafford Tree Service is licensed, bonded, and insured to provide you the very best tree trimming experience. Call today, 727-546-8786, 727-546-8786, on the web at staffordtreesvc.com.
Biophilia, our innate attraction to other living things. It's why people love plants. And around Tampa Bay, Plants, that's Plantz, is bringing nature inside, in workspaces and homes by delivering beautiful foliage plants. Our plants increase oxygen and filter out pollutants, reducing stress and improving productivity. And get you in touch with your biophilic side. Go to plantz.us.
Welcome back to the Ask Mr. Greenthumb in Real Estate Show. Connect online at askmrgreenthumb.com. Got questions about gardening, real estate, or both? Give him a call at 727-254-7127. That's 727-254-7127. And now your hosts, Stan and James DeFreitas.
And we are here with Kelly Stafford. One of the things I was thinking, I saw a little thing on this garden tips with fine gardening, and they were talking about putting, one of those trays that you get all your annuals in if you get a whole flat. And you could put that on the back of your wheelbarrow, and you could kind of bungee it to the two wooden handles or metal handles, and you'd have a place to put your tools. Because by the time you start putting dirt and mulch and everything else in your wheelbarrow, it's full. And this would give you one more little tray place to put your little hand trowel or whatever else you wanted. So it kind of made sense. And I thought, well, anytime I come across some good little idea.
So in other words, the PSA is be careful. You only get one back, protect it. And this is probably really good advice, too, for the people that you employ, Kelly, because, we were talking about this during the break, too, is, workman's comp is expensive. And it's one of the reasons why I think a lot of tree trimming companies go and they spend the $600,000 on equipment, because it's not only that it's time efficient, but it's also protect the workers. Maybe talk about that aspect of your business as well.
Right, absolutely. It definitely makes a difference on the equipment that you have and you use, and you're not breaking your guys' backs essentially.
Right, and plus one of the people that that is doing this job is your brother. It's a family member. Right. So you want
to take care of him.
Yeah, you want to take care
Keep
of
him around.
So it's not just not that you would be that way anyway. Kelly's the type of individual who would take care of people irrespective of the familial status. So,
right.
Because you're a good person. And that's one of the things I would say is that if you can lower your liability in business, it's first of all, we don't need to make lawyers more money, okay? They're doing fine on their own, okay? What we need to do is be a little more cognizant of how to mitigate the risk so we don't need to involve lawyers. And I think that's something that this equipment allows a lot of people to do. And it's also safer for, the end user, the customer. One of the reasons cranes are so useful is that you can piecemeal the tree out without having to worry about that tree falling in the wrong direction. Even when people do preliminary cuts and they do what, I forget what they call it, side cutting, or, when they try to wedge out a section of the tree to try to get it to fall in a certain way. Sometimes things don't always go as planned.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
There can be a back kick sometimes that can be dangerous.
Yeah.
Right.
And it also mentioned one of our friends that is in the business. I won't mention who he is, but great company, been around forever. And he had a guy, and they got near a high power line.
That was such a sad story.
And the guy was well-trained, and he didn't really touch the line. He was probably no more than 5 or 6 feet from the line.
It can grab, even if you're not touching the line, that
jumped
power.
the bucket. Even though you're in an insulated bucket, and he had insulation on him, it jumped the bucket and killed the guy.
Oh, wow.
And what a horrible, and I know the guy felt, the owner felt horrible.
It was a terribly sad
And he kept thinking,
scenario.
the guy did pretty much, we also worked on a case, an eminent domain case, up near the Georgia line. And the guy wanted extra footage because he had a big tree spade that he digs these huge trees.
Yeah.
He had the biggest tree spade I've ever seen.
Well, that case has been settled, so we can talk about that. That was the That was in Live Oak, Florida.
Yeah, up in Live Oak, near almost I-10.
You won't believe why they named it that.
Yeah.
Live oaks.
Tons of live oaks there. And he's actually was an interesting fella because he was actually growing, 30, 40 foot tall live oaks that were harvestable and
Transferable.
Wow.
Yeah.
yeah.
And he's
That's
got
a big tree spade.
His
Yeah.
tree spade must be from that window there to this wall over here.
Yeah,
I mean,
we
it
were
was
shocked.
huge. And I'm going, how do you move something that's, that has a caliper that big on it?
Yeah.
And he says, well, we can do it. He says, we have them. This tree spade will do it. And he moves them for a lot of the big clients.
Disney was one of them. Disney and
Right.
Universal Studios, they don't like waiting for trees to grow, and they can afford to go ahead and say whatever it is, it is.
Yeah,
if
they
it's
got plenty of money.
If it's instantaneous, if a designer wants it, they're going to say, well, I don't care what it costs. We're going to move that tree into that spot because,
Right.
you don't want to see the whatever cog railroad or something behind you.
But in that particular case, it was interesting because it was an eminent domain proceeding where they were taking a section, but it wouldn't have allowed for him to have access for his trailer trucks to make a complete circuit so that he could then harvest these trees safely from where the power lines were going.
Yep,
Okay.
so they had to move them back. And that was one of the concerns. When I'm out there with my tree spade, and it's a fairly big piece of equipment, and these were the major power lines. He says,
Right.
I don't want my guys anywhere near
that.
because, whatever reason, and as much as we know about electricity, as you say, some things, how does it jump 5 or 6 feet? Well, it can.
It can. And
Yeah.
well, and what you don't know can hurt you. And that's the big PSA, I guess, for the day is
Or it
that
can kill you.
it can kill you. Yeah. Well, I wasn't going to go to the finality of that because that sounds rather negative, but yeah, it can. And so again, one of the things I would say is that's one of the things that really separates, a company that has trained arborists on staff, certified arborist, is licensed, bonded, and insured, and the guy, Larry the lawn man with his
It's not us.
yeah, exactly. And the other thing I would suggest too is that there is this stereotypical idea that if you work in the tree industry, I don't know how you fight it, because Stan and I are constantly trying to make sure that, especially in legal cases, that we're not thought of as the guy with the station wagon and the lawnmower sticking out. And that there is actual training there and there's actual knowledge and everything that they don't have, which is why they hired us to begin with. But I will say you're always thought of as somehow lesser. And,
True.
and it's just not true. If they could do it, then you didn't need to call me, and somehow you needed to call us, so somehow you needed us. Now, and a lot of the times in eminent domain cases, they're calling us at the very last minute. And then
Because they want to settle without using the experts if they can, but then they're in deep water if they can't.
Right.
Right.
Can't settle it, and often they can't.
Well, and the big issue for us too is that what happens when it doesn't settle, but you waited so long that the eminent domain procedure has already started, and they're already at the tree removal stage.
I
then
can't
what?
tell you how many cases people have called me and said, I need you to get out there in the next 2 weeks.
Right.
And it's usually in Podunk, Florida. And I go, well, my life is somewhat structured. I can't always just go from here to there.
Right. Or Stan, could you look at photos that were of trees that were once
and
there?
I'm not testifying to something in court.
Right.
And they're no
That's-
longer there.
Here's the trunks of what was.
Right. Here's this big pile of dirt where a tree once stood. Could you take a look at that, Stan?
And I go, yeah, there probably was, and we've got 2 or 3 of our clients over $1 million, which today isn't that much. I mean,
Right.
it means you can
It
go to
used to
Publix.
be impressive.
You can go to Publix 25 times now if you are worth at least $1 million. I used to love those guys who would go, we'll talk to you about your estate planning if you're worth more than $5 million. If not, please don't call.
Right,
And I'm
right,
going,
right.
well, geez, that sounded friendly. I think I'll go off to the GF Henry Fonda if you're going to give me that routine. Anyway, so we're here to help answer your questions.
So real quick question, Kelly, that I wanted to ask you is, as we start to approach the hurricane season, and I forget, when does hurricane season really hit? Is it June?
June, I think it's like June.
June. Okay.
Yeah.
The reason I mentioned is we have a lot of new people that have come into Florida, and so this will be their first year. Some of them will be their first year here in Florida, so they're not keyed up for this.
Yeah.
About what to expect. So give us a rundown of what people should be thinking.
Yeah, I think a lot of the people that came in, last year, and then we got those 2 storms. I think that was an eye opener for them. We went down south when that storm came in, and it's pretty devastated down there. So I'm sure a lot of people are realizing that's something that they weren't expecting.
Right. And, and so my thoughts, and again, I would imagine as you get closer to that magic date, people start to get a little more motivated to want to take on these things. But that might be a mistake. They should be calling you now, shouldn't they?
Yeah, it's always good to call a little bit before, because it gets pretty busy that time of year, not just because of the hurricane season, but it's summer and everything's growing, and that's when stuff starts touching the roof. And you should probably address it, a few months before the storm season really kicks in.
Right. So call now. Mark that down on your calendar. I'm calling Kelly this week because I don't want to wait till June and go, Kelly, there's a hurricane about 100 miles out. Can you be out here in the next 24 hours?
And this time of year tends to be a little slower. This is the slower time, because everything's kind of dormant. And so it's a good time to call because, we're not as busy as we would be during the summer months.
And to call you again, they would call.
And they're going to reach me at 727-278. Oh, actually, I'll give you my cell phone because it forwards to my cell a lot of times. So 278-9841 is my cell.
Okay.
And then 727-546-8786.
Okay. Good. And then for those people that are technologically savvy, they will then go to your website too at StaffordTreeSVC.com. Okay, they can fill out a questionnaire or your number is posted right there on the website, depending upon their way of communicating. And, and the wonderful thing about it is Kelly is just like you. She is warm, she's personable, and she's going to take care of you.
And that's important. So make sure you got to know, like, and trust. And just by hearing her on our show, know you're going to know, like, and trust her because she's the same. What you see and what you hear is what you're going to get.
That's right.
So
I appreciate that.
We endorse her wholeheartedly. And we don't do that for everybody.
That's true. We absolutely don't. And so, if you have any concerns in that area, Kelly's going to take care of you. And we sure do appreciate having you come in as a guest today.
I appreciate being here.
You always add so much to our show, and we thank you for making the time.
So, we appreciate you. We'll see you again. And, of course, that means contact her, contact us. Enjoy your life and garden just as much as you can.
Want to talk real estate? Remember, you can reach Stan at 727-423-4799.